When I listen to Sam Fender, it feels as if he brings me into his world and makes me belong there. I've spent many years loving Sam as a musician and for all the pieces that he shares of himself. And I remember the moment that 17 Going Under hit me like it was mine. It was the summer of 2022, and I was on the first road trip that I'd ever taken by myself. And as I was driving back to the hotel, I looked up to see what felt like every single star shining in the night sky. And I heard the words, "I was far too scared to hit him, but I would hit him in a heartbeat now." That's the thing with anger, it begs to stick around. So it can fleece you of your beauty and leave you spent with now to offer. Makes you hurt the ones who love you. You hurt them like they're nothing. And I heard that ringing in the background like a soundtrack. The feeling that I felt in that moment reminds me of a moment I would later feel while reading the book called Mayflies. There's a line in the book that says, "I totally love those words," he said, "and I wish they were mine." I also remember the moment where I stumbled across Sam singing "Remember My Name" on a piano in a small bar before its release. I must have watched it over 20 times because at the time that I found it, I had no clue if this song was ever going to see the light of day. And the little snippet that I heard of that song hit me the same way that Spit of You does, or Two People does. It's these moments where music transcends the mundane. There are artists that help you forget about your pain. There are artists that help you make sense of your pain. There are artists that suffocate you within your pain. And then there are artists like Sam Fender. Someone who can remind you of reality, stand beside you, and then walk you to the other side. We could sit here today and talk about everything right that Sam does, lyrically or sonically, or every correct choice that a bandmate or a producer has made on his work, all of which have a massive impact on the final results. But it is the way that Sam sees the world that allows his music to become what it is. It's the amount he's been through and yet still chosen to fight that bleeds into the words that he's written. Rick Rubin wrote this in the book, A Creative Act, A Way of Being. He says, "What causes us to notice a piece of art is rarely the point being made. We are drawn to the way an artist's filter refracts ideas, not the ideas themselves." Sam is the only musician that I've come across where it feels like you've been stabbed in the gut, but you've asked for it to happen. I'm not sure whether it's brilliance or manipulation, but as Sam and his team constructs every single song, it's like you can feel his heart coming through with the chords that are chosen. And I don't think I'll ever be able to articulate the way that the beginning of Spit of You makes me feel. To me, Sam represents the most human expression of life, the contrast of light and dark, of pain and celebration. And I think that's what sets him apart. He is able to place himself into the depths of his own darkness, into the depths of other people's darkness, and then walk out of it into the light. The way that his songs are constantly constructed are set up for pain and relief. It takes me back to the classic lesson that we were all taught as kids of how to create a good story. Every good story has a conflict and a resolution. I can hear my teacher in my head right now, but it is generally true. If you're anything like me, you may torture yourself from time to time with a book that consists of only conflict and no resolution. But I would be lying if I said there was not a longing for a conclusion. I am always searching for an answer to my question. And whether purposeful or not, I feel like Sam does this within his music. I tried for so long to put words to the way that his music feels, and the best that I could come up with are his songs are ones of recovery. Within Sam's music, I've found that there's a level of darkness that you don't want to face, with the subject matters often being of mental health or politics or social psychology or sociology, all of which are real and can't be ignored, but when we focus on them too much, often causes a lot of grief. But what Sam has accomplished in his music is to allow you to feel alive even in the darkest of places. And this will always be a skill of his that I admire. Hypersonic Missiles is an example of this, but more recently, so is People Watching. But he says it arguably the best on maybe his best song ever, The Dying Light. He says, "Maybe I could use a hand. I must admit I'm out of bright ideas to keep the hell at bay. Distractions only last a day. The night is so impossible, it haunts the few who dare to look. Its marks are so hereditary, I'm terrified of having kids. But I'm damned if I give up tonight. I must repel the dying light. For Mom and Dad and all my pals, for all the ones who didn't make the night." The Dying Light is actually a perfect example of my point. The title alone projects the idea of light and dark coexisting. Sam's ability to take experiences and emotions that are heavy and to make them liftable shines so bright in this song. He highlights the humanity of pain, which makes the listener feel strong enough to face it and to feel like it's possible to overcome it. This is the reason that I believe Sam stands out from most current musicians, and why I believe him to be a generational talent. But one of my personal favorite things about Sam Fender is his ability to incorporate his personality into his music. He does this so effectively when he writes a blunt lyric like, "Please stop trying to impress people who don't care about you." But where his writing then goes past just personality to storytelling is when he combines one of these blunt statements with poetic imagery. For example, "Every moment in this dark world, I'm terrified, reaching for a light in a gauntlet of toxic paradigms." Or, "Standing on the side, I never was the silent type, all the endless gray conundrums that are painted black and white." And to focus in on that last line from Long Way Off, it is one of my favorites that Sam has ever written. I think it encompasses what I feel so often when I look around the world and the way that we were taught to live in it. All the endless gray conundrums that are painted black and white. To me, there seems to be a never-ending stream of terrible news, terrible stories, terrible lies, terrible truths. And when they're presented to us, whether that be through social media or news or friends or family, they're made out to be something that could be easily fixed. Pick your side is often the undertone of the message. But when you really look at something, it ends up being gray. The black and white only comes down to how you decide to see it. And what ends up happening is that we get so lost in arguing, we forget what we were even talking about. Sam follows up the line that I just read with, "I heard 100 million voices, sound the same both left and right. We're still a long way off." It is often art that allows us to express our criticisms of society, politics, pain, and dissatisfaction. The artist ends up becoming a vessel for the listener. I saw a video of people moshing to Sam Fender at a UK gig, and one of the comments on the video was, "How do you even mosh to Sam Fender?" And to that I'd say, you're simply listening to the music wrong. All respect to the roots that moshing comes from genres like punk and metal, and I took my brother to a Wonder Horse gig, and the crowd was pretty chill, but they moshed to Wonder Horse's song Rain. And when my brother goes to a show, he's typically going to like a death metal show, so it was a lot lighter than what he's used to, and I saw a smile come across his face as he looked at the guys moshing beside us, and I knew he was thinking something along the lines of, "Well, this is cute," which is not to take away from its relevance in that moment, but just because in comparison to what my brother experiences, it was so small. So while I 100% understand the criticism and the questioning of it, at the end of the day, moshing is just a physical expression of what you're hearing coming out of your body. And if Sam's music doesn't rile you up, then you're not listening. Sam's songwriting is something that I've always appreciated about him the most. The mix of criticism and poetry always leaves me in this state of awe. There is a very clear grit to him, yet it mixes so beautifully with his sensitivity. And much of Sam's perspective reflects the places that he grew up, just like it would for all of us. But I think his hometown influence is something that shines so brightly through his music, and you can see just how much it's impacted who he's become. I've talked about Sam in specific on one other episode in the past. It was about the influence of our homes on the way that we create music or the way that we live in the world. And I took the song Homesick by Noah Kahan and I dissected the version of it that he had Sam Fender join on. When I look back on this song, I still recognize it as such a great collaboration between two people who bleed where they're from for good or for bad. And that will continue to be one of the most unique parts about Sam for me. That even though I've never stepped foot in North Shields, I can feel the impact of where he's grown up in the way that he carries himself. I've spent my life living under cloud and rain and in very similar weather conditions that Sam would have, and I feel that in his writing. I've never really connected to garage band rock or indie rock from California or Australia because it was never the environment that I grew up in. No matter how much I hate parts of my hometown or despise the feelings of being stuck or imagine running away to a world that feels completely different, I will always find solace in the place that I grew up in. And that sentiment that Sam brings to his music, I feel like I understand it. As he sings on Homesick, "Well, I grew up in the fallout from the riots in the 90s. Static cranes stand lifeless, casting shadows on the town. I stare out that hollowed ocean as if to pick a fight, for the dreams my old man dreamt for me lay on the other side, or on me and the dog. I've got a big chip on my shoulder, so big that the seagulls dive. It's a mark that I've inherited, like convictions in my stride. Small town-induced psychosis grows ripe in its prime. Oh, I know they want to maim me. Oh, they all have an axe to grind." Or on Wild Grey Ocean, "Wild grey ocean buried in my eyes, the coast town muscles through weekdays and 9 to 5s. I finish work and compartmentalize, with the wild grey ocean buried in my eyes. Always in the dark, I'd ask you such silly things, tore apart your heart, running around this town, and in that weakness, I'll suffer until I die, with the wild grey ocean buried in my eyes." There is a book that I have to talk about when I'm talking about Sam Fender. It's the one that I referenced earlier called Mayflies, and it's by Andrew O'Hagan. It follows the friendship between two Scottish teens until they grow up to be in their 50s. As you read the first half, you get to watch them be boys together and express their love for the music that was coming out of England in the 80s. And as you continue to read into the second half of the book, you get to see them be men together, how they reminisce, and how they now face the pain of death and what that means. Through both halves of the book, you follow along as they struggle to put names to their feelings. A sentiment that men often express is something that is hard to learn, especially when they were not taught how. To me, the book is a beautiful depiction of friendship, brotherhood, and tackling the hard parts of life in any way that we know how. And I feel like it is exactly what Sam does within his music. With songs like Dead Boys, 17 Going Under, The Borders, or Last to Make It Home, Sam has always been an advocate of men's mental health in the most honest of ways. I believe it is honesty that we all look for, and that honesty is one of the truest forms of love. And Sam's ability to be vulnerable on the scale that he has will impact more people than he'll ever know. I want to put a disclaimer quickly. I am going to talk about a little bit more of the mental health side quickly. I'm going to talk about Dead Boys because it was the first song I ever heard by Sam Fender. And as soon as I sat with it and really heard the lyrics, I found myself putting up a wall with it. I remember not wanting to play it. I remember how hard it was to hear it. but I couldn't stop listening to it. Sam has shared many of his own thoughts on writing Dead Boys and what that's meant to him, but he says in specific, "You're allowed to be a big hard lad, you can be a big muscly geezer, you can do all those classic masculine rules, but being able to talk isn't going to strip you of that. And being able to tell your son that talking is a good thing and crying is natural." I think that's the biggest thing that men need to take on now as we progress forward. I would like to echo his sentiments here today. Don't let yourself get caught in the cycle that your feelings define who you are or your future. Failures or weaknesses are the least of who you are. We are not meant to go through life alone, and there are going to be many, many circumstances where you need people to lean on. When I was writing this part of today's episode, to be frank, I found it really hard to find the perfect thing to say. I feel inadequate to have the right words on this subject because I'm not a guy. I've never been in a guy's mind, but I felt it was very necessary to say something. So I thought to myself, if I had a son one day, what would I say to him? And I kept hearing the words, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made," a sentiment that I've grown up hearing all my life that comes from Psalm 139. Fearfully in this context means reverence, respect, or awe. And as I was thinking on this excerpt, I wanted to go back and read the rest of the psalm, but I'll get back to that in a second. I want to talk about that snippet of the Dying Light that I read earlier and read it again. Sam sings, "Maybe I could use a hand. I must admit I'm out of bright ideas to keep the hell at bay. Distractions only last a day. The night is so impossible. It haunts the few who dare to look. Its marks are so hereditary. I'm terrified of having kids. But I'm damned if I give up tonight. I must repel the dying light. For Mom and Dad and all my pals. For all the ones who didn't make the night." Verses 11 to 12 of Psalm 139 read, "If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you." Inside every dark room there is a door, and underneath every door there is a crack of light. Let the light define the way in which you see the world. Even though the story of Mayflies was following Scottish characters, I couldn't help but see Sam in North Shields, him as a young guy and looking towards his friends and them all learning to navigate the life that they were given. And there was a couple quotes in that book that hit me the same way that Sam's lyrics always do, so I wanted to read them out here as well. They say you know nothing at 18, but there are things you know at 18 that you will never know again. Morrissey would lose his youth, and not just his youth, but the gusto that took him across that stage with a banner saying, "The Queen is dead," is a thing of permanence. We didn't know it at the time, but it was also, for all of us, a tender goodbye, and we would never be these people again. Reminding me of The Borders by Sam, or what we had that day was our story. We didn't have the other bit, the future, and we had no way of knowing what that would be like. Perhaps it would change our memory of all of this. Or perhaps it would draw from it. Nobody knew. But I'm sure I felt that the story of that hall, and how we reached it, would never vanish, reminding me of 17 going under. Or, yet now those stories appeared real and very local, familiarly sad and sadly familiar. The litany of small tragedies that matter more to some than others, reminding me of people watching. When I listen to music, I know that I strike gold when it leaves me sitting in silence staring at a wall. Or, when I read a good book, I know that I strike gold when I drop it to my lap and have to recollect myself. These moments are the reason that I consume art, to find the sense that something can mean more. And that quote that I mentioned at the beginning of today's episode from the book that says, "I love these words, I wish they were mine," perfectly encapsulates the moment where music becomes magic. And I'm speaking today of Sam because he's continually leaving me in this sense of, I love those words, I wish they were mine. And I know that I'm not alone in this sentiment. I was watching a Turning the Tables video, which is a channel that I talk about all the time on here, so I'll have them linked below. And they were actually reacting to 17 Going Under by Sam Fender, and when Spit of You came on, both the son and the father said something along the lines of, I would die happy if I could write a riff as good as this. And I knew exactly what they were saying. I may not be from North Shields, or England for that matter, and I don't have the lens to see the impact that Sam has made on men's mental health, but I can surely see the impact that he's made in the world. If I could tell you any story about Sam Fender to share his character to you, it would be this one. Sam was discovered by Owen Davies in Low Lights Tavern, one of the pubs in the town that he'd grown up in. At the time, Sam was working at the bar, and occasionally his boss would let him grab his guitar and play a couple songs for the pub. And it just so happened that on one of those nights, Owen Davies would be in the Low Lights Tavern pub, celebrating a recent win with Ben Howard. It is this moment of chance that took Sam out of performing covers in the corner of his local pub to performing at St. James Park just a couple years later, a 52,000 person football stadium. But it is not chance that brought Sam Fender back to the Low Lights Tavern pub after winning his own Brit Award to make it a beer tap there. It is character. Once again, I will reference Rick Rubin. The real work of the artist is a way in being in the world. Let's let music bring us together, and don't forget to grow up slowly.